Palo Fabuš, who will be the keynote for the beginning, and then he will moderate the whole day. So Palo is a philosopher, teacher, translator. I maybe forget something. And I will give him a word right now because he will introduce the other guests and tell you more about the timeline for today. So thank you for coming and enjoy.
Thank you. Welcome to the Opera Hub. Welcome to the Photograf Festival. And for our international speakers, welcome to Prague. At first, I'd like to speak shortly about the idea behind this symposium. Why is it conceived as it is? And afterwards, I'll give short remarks on the program. The main idea why we are here is, I believe, is that we are addicted to work. We are addicted to work, and quite badly. And I'd like to qualify that statement very briefly. The thing is, despite all the technology that was supposed to liberate us from the burden of the work, as it was promised more than 100 years ago, we, at least us, the people living in the cities, are somewhat tired. We are so busy and we feel so overwhelmed. But why is it so? Did the technology not work as intended? Well, yes and no. We are indeed largely free from the menial work, but at the same time, new burdens have been blossoming for a while now, and we are yet to learn to face them accordingly. And we are far from being there. I mean, even in the free time we gain thanks to the technology, we all too voluntarily think in the categories of productivity and effectivity. And we effectively interiorize this kind of the kind of thought that used to be imposed from the outside by the tools and figures such as factory whistle, walls, tough bosses, and strict rules, whose advantage, and we can see it now, I believe, was that even though we had to obey them if we wanted to be paid, we could actually keep distance from them. But with a slow and fundamental restructuring of the way we work, which to a large extent means restructuring the way we think, what we expect, mainly from ourselves, while throwing away the old external chains, we erected new ones. They are internal and often effectively even more cruel. Hence the epidemics of depression or the reports of the perfectionism of the youth. Now, those 16 hours a day in a factory is really a thing of the past, or the uttermost margins at best. However, the work indeed has changed, and it is not as much physical as psychological, not as objective as subjective, involving the whole of our personality and well-being. And in this sense, we do spend 16 working hours a day in our heads. Our head is our office now, actually. Take even this moment. It's obvious that no matter how pleasurable this occasion is for me, and I hope for the speakers, not to mention you, the audience, even in this moment, using our cognitive capacities to speak or listen to a foreign language, to focus on complex or new ideas, and understand each other means we are working. But you're also working, which is why I'm grateful you decided to dedicate a portion of your free time to come here and exert the kind of energy that is indiscernible from the one exerted for the sake of paid labor. So what does it mean that we are addicted to work? Well, it could mean more than one thing, but I'd like to give you briefly an example. The thing is that the more one liberates herself from the externally imposed rules and structures, the more she needs to recreate them internally, or actually even recreate them externally again. Take for example this space. I mean, this is a space, as I understand it, organized for the sake of freelancers, and as it is so often said, freelancers crave structure. Structure either in the form of fixed working conditions or visible, quantifiable outcomes. Actually, I even like to think about spaces like this one as a sort of atavism. I mean, the kind of restraints and external chains we have been liberated from, we again reinvent them in sort of these institutions like this one. And there were even questions: why should we do a symposium about non-working in the working space? And I don't even think it's ironic. Actually, it's fitting. First of all, it's because I'm quite confident that my fellow co-organizers searched meticulously for a venue that would be appropriate not just spatially but also with regard to the amenities that would help us spend here the whole afternoon comfortably. And I think it's quite telling that apart from the academic environment, only facilities such as these are available for an event that involves some public debate. So how else does the craving for structures look like? We can take, for example, the popularity of time management games on Facebook or the apps for smartphones, and all kinds of simulations of productive or other goal-oriented activities like Farmville, trivia, Sims, and so on. Or for example, take these coloring books that were quite fashionable a few years ago. And I think it would be a mistake to take it as a random fad. This simple feeling of pre-drawn blank spaces is actually not that much dissimilar to filling out a bureaucratic form. And not unlike the students who usually prefer doing a choice-based test to a written exam. And I could also mention the recent popularity of books expounding the therapeutic benefits of cleaning and tidying up. And it is this desire to merely go along and reproduce the pre-established structures that suggest that the frustration with work is being remedied, quite perversely, by even more work. A word that is satisfying because it provides as a palliative version of the daily burdens. So the question is, how can we free ourselves from this addiction? I think, simply said, we should do less, much more less, at least from the perspective of quantity, because from the qualitative perspective, doing less could be actually, I believe it is, much harder, heroic even. It will probably involve some kind of ideological bootstrapping to pull ourselves from the precarious situations, just like Baron Munchausen pulled himself by his hair from the mud. It should be some kind of counter-move to steer the energies at hand in a better direction, to seduce, to bring others to dreams about the future without work. That will be all for my introduction. And before I introduce our first speaker, let me just tell you briefly that after the first two speakers, there will be a break before we continue with the other two speakers, and after that there will be a panel discussion with all four of them. And so without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Christian Todt, who is an economist, a filmmaker, and whose wonderful movie we've just seen before we start the symposium. Over to you, Christian.
Thank you, Palo. I usually stand. There's no problem with the camera here. So, I don't know if everybody has seen the movie before. Who hasn't? Okay, so there are 3-4 people who don't know what I'm talking about now. going to go through aspects of unconditional basic income which were not in the movie and dive a little deeper into the whole thing. So I'm an economist, so I studied economics years back and decided during my studies to become an artist instead. So I've never really worked as an economist. I just did my graduation thesis on the topic of unconditional basic income. I started my PhD on the same topic, but decided to do a movie instead to, like Palo said, to seduce more people. And it's better to do that with a film than with a PhD paper nobody reads. And well, the movie was quite successful to this day. Just been screened in lots of countries, well, film festivals, and got theatrical release in several countries. And always starts a big discussion on the topic, and which was my aim. And also at the same time lifts people up, leaves them with a positive feeling. I hope I achieved that, and a feeling of hope, and that we still can change the world. Because Teresa just told me one of the reasons it's not that crowded here, apart from the weather and all the other things that are going on in Prague, is that there are communal elections all over the Czech Republic right now, and lots of the progressive people, I suppose, who live here in Prague and usually attend these kinds of symposiums, are back in their home communities and try to stop, I don't know, the new fascists, you could call them probably. I'm not so familiar with Czech communal politics, but I suppose it's pretty much the same as it is in Austria, in Germany, in the US, and everywhere in the so-called developed world. And this is actually one of the main reasons we have to have a basic income, an unconditional basic income. We're at the crossroads right now between, well, a future which is bright, hopeful, where we have the means to participate in democracy. And I think basic income is a necessity to this. In my opinion, democracy, liberal democracy, is not possible without having a basic income as the foundation for it. Because it gives people time to think, it gives people power to do something. As was told in the film, Daniel Hagen, the Swiss guy, said basic income is not only a way of redistributing money, but it's a way of redistributing power from the top to everybody. And I'm afraid without having basic income implemented, we're really shifting towards a new fascist future within the next 5 to 10 years. So the first reason for me to have basic income is really it's about justice. It's about giving everybody his or her share of the profits this planet makes. That's why I started the film with the example of Alaska. As you recall, in Alaska there's this huge state fund, fueled of course by the oil revenues Alaska has, and its dividend is distributed once a year to all Alaskans from cradle to grave. And this is an example. Of course, this is not really a basic income you can live off, but it's an example of that we are really morally entitled to part of the value of the land, since it's no longer possible to, like in hunter-gatherer society before private property was invented, to go out, shoot a deer and eat it, or collect vegetables in the city. Everything's owned by somebody. And if you're not really born rich and inherit a huge estate, you have to work in order to live. And that shouldn't be the case in the first place. So the first reason to have basic income is that we are entitled to part of the value of the land, of the resources. And not only of resources in the sense of oil, as it was presented here in the Alaska model, but resources are more and more immaterial resources nowadays. Like here, suppose in this shared workplace, people are knowledge workers, people invent ideas, and those ideas are real resources. Or data. Now there's this discussion with taxing the big data corporations like Google or Facebook, and there are even some people who say the revenue should go in a modest basic income. So, first is justice. The second reason to have a basic income is an economic reason, because basic income makes the economy much more efficient than it is now. Implementing a basic income, I always hear, oh, this would be a huge experiment and nobody can really be sure what the outcome is, and so we shouldn't try it in the first place. But our current economic system is a huge experiment. We always see it when big crises appear, like the last one in 2007, 2008, the subprime crisis. No economist has an idea how to deal with it, can predict it, and it gets worse and worse. You also said, or put the emphasis on what is the meaning of a job you do. And there's a direct connection to the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008, in my opinion. But I have to start in the 1930s with this. In the 1930s, John Maynard Keynes, the famous economist, he wrote a paper which is very famous too, which is called The Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren. In this paper, he predicted that if the economy develops the way he predicts, and he's spot on for this year, that in 100 years, so in 2030, we only would have to work for 15 hours per week in order to have the same standard of living. But why didn't it happen? That's the big question. And there's a good quote which describes it all. Richard Buckminster Fuller said in the 1970s about our economy that we are having inspectors who are inspecting inspectors, and we have people who are making tools for inspectors to inspect inspectors. So that's the whole economy in a nutshell. And just recently, David Graeber, the famous anthropologist of the London School of Economics, published a book which is called Bullshit Jobs. And it pretty much says that 30 to 40% of all jobs in the economy are bullshit jobs, which are jobs that are either not necessary for the economy or for society as a whole, or are even destructive for the economy or the society as a whole. And one of the examples, for instance, is in the 1980s, lots of rocket scientists were hired by Wall Street to come up with new ideas, new products for the financial markets, subprime credits and stuff like that. Instead of remaining with NASA or at universities. So we pulled this huge talent from a place where it could actually bring humanity further to an industry which completely destructed a huge part of the economy and of the society 10 years ago. So instead of going to Mars, Okay, we can debate about how good that is. But instead of being on Mars with the rocket scientists who were at NASA, we had the subprime crisis, which is a good definition of a very destructive bullshit job. And David Graeber also gives a rule of thumb how you can detect a bullshit job. He says, at the end of the year, look at your tax receipts, and the higher the number there is, the higher your salary, the higher your income, the higher is the probability that you actually are working in a bullshit job. So people who get paid very much typically are working in bullshit jobs. On the other hand, people who get paid very low salaries or don't get paid at all, like people who care for relatives, people who bring up children, are not paid at all. And those are very important tasks. Without them, the economy would completely stop working. So if we would get rid of this thinking and could have a more efficient economy, we could have a more efficient economy if we could get rid of this thinking. And I think basic income is the only way to achieve this. If everybody had the means to do the things he or she really likes, he or she is really good at, graduate in studies who he or she really likes, people would be more efficient, people would be more happy, and people would benefit for the whole economy. Yeah. I don't know what your occupation here is. Are there many artists here? Who's an artist? Or who's in the creative industries as a whole, including artists? Who does anything different from that? What is it you do?
I'm an IT guy.
Pardon?
I'm a serverist and I code.
Okay, well, that's creative too, isn't it? So more or less, depending.
What work isn't?
Yeah, what work isn't? That's a good point. Well. What work isn't?
I don't know, this was a question.
You think everything is really creative? Yeah.
Maybe standing at the conveyor belt, it's not really creative.
Yeah, maybe that's not creative, yeah. So why do we still have people standing at the conveyor belt?
I think, yeah, we do.
Yeah, but I don't think we need them to stand there. And I think it's not really creative for the people who are standing at the conveyor belt. They don't really enjoy the work they're doing. They just do it because they have to do it to earn a living. And that's where automation comes into place. Well, we have this huge progress in automation over the last 70, 80 years, but because we invented bullshit jobs, because we have this theology that everybody has to have work in order to live, we simply don't accept that there could be another way. So it's the complete opposite of efficiency for me. Well, I want to stop here and quite dive into some questions you have, because I see that your faces you want to ask something. Yeah, please. Do we need microphones for this?
Yeah, I think it's recording, so we
Okay.
can that up.
There was this quite funny moment in the film where I guess it was an archive where they were going back and forth between Robert Works, Human Thing, Robert Works.
Yeah,
Human
it was an
Thing.
IBM commercial.
IBM commercial.
Actually by Jim Henson, the inventor of the Muppets.
And I was wondering if you could expand on this kind of presupposition that the work of the human is immaterial. I don't know, I think there's a simplification in saying that we are purely creative and that we can just get rid of the material work. Or, but do you think it's that simple?
Well, maybe not now, but in 5 or 10 years, if the predictions come true and the exponentiality of the development continues, I see no reason that in the next 5, 10 or 20 years there's any job left actually which computers or robots can't do on par or even better than any human.
And just to make myself a bit the devil's advocate, because I was discussing with Swiss people, and you were right underlining there's a huge theology tradition that work is in a way health and sanity.
Yes.
That if suddenly you don't have what to do of your day as a job, how miserable it is. You lose the sense of purpose in your daily life, and I think there's a lot of, the vote in Switzerland, I think a lot of people, as much as they like the idea, they're like, it's too, it's dangerous for mental health. Maybe I'm exaggerating a bit here, but there's something of how okay, well, we know it's a progressive discourse, but still there's very much this fear of freedom.
Yes. And you're not exaggerating. You're not exaggerating.
Yeah.
It's actually the Protestant work ethic, especially the Swiss.
Very much the Protestant tradition and so on. And so, what would be what are the strategies to kind of unthink that, or because I feel that's a real challenge. Because myself, I must say, I'm an artist, and I guess I also took this decision to have the freedom of organizing my time the way I wanted, and I often suffer from that also, of this freedom. Of having to compose by my own all the time. So I don't know, but I feel that's a very hard, something very hard to bridge in society as a whole.
Yes, it is, definitely. But either we learn it by convincing people with talks like this, or with a movie like mine, or with talking about basic income with your relatives at Christmas or your friends, and try to convince them, if you are convinced of the idea. Or we face a catastrophe in the next, as I said, 5 to 10 years. I didn't see any other option. Either implement something like unconditional basic income, or being doomed in a totalitarian new fascist regime, which will use the robots and the computers and the automation in order to control us. Like, you see what's happening in China right now, the social credit system, where every citizen gets social credit according on his or her behavior, and is banned with a low credit system from riding the train or taking the airplane and stuff like that. So it's, I think, really just the 2 ways, and we should get rid of the idea that it's still possible to continue more or less the same system we're having now, which often comes from the left, which is against basic income sometimes, because they think that when you apply a basic income model with a very low basic income and get rid of the welfare state at the same time. This could be a threat, of course, to society. Of course, they're right. This could be a huge problem, because basic income is not basic income. The rights are often in favor for basic income because of exactly this. So we would need, of course, a basic income which is high, which is progressive, which you can really live off, and where you really gain the freedom to actively participate in society, which would strengthen liberal democracy. And that's what, for me, basic income is all about in a nutshell, strengthening liberal democracy. And just saying that everybody is equal, and everybody gets the equal amount of the wealth which belongs all of us together in the first place.
Hello. Yeah, that's something you mentioned. I sometimes feel that the basic income is very disconnected from the sort of other political emancipatory projects, and sometimes seem like it can be easily fitted in this neoliberal hell. And I'm wondering what's the advantage of sort of using this particular tool to sort of to change how we live, and what's not better to put our energy in some broader political projects, such as some I don't know, socialist vision which sort of encompasses all aspects of how we live. Because I think, yeah, I feel sort of suspicious how compatible is basic income with capitalism and, yeah.
Well, my vision is like this kind of society that's shown in Star Trek: Next Generation. That's why I decided to start the movie and to end the movie with Star Trek TNG and with this specific episode. Because in Star Trek we have this, often people call it a techno-communist society, where money doesn't exist. This is the real utopia. Basic income is just the first step towards this utopia. It's just a small design step towards this utopia. So I always say to the critics from the left especially, basic income doesn't solve any problems at its own. Basic income is just a necessary foundation upon which we can deal with the big problems like climate change, like redistribution of money, like what kind of society we would like to have. But first, we need to have basic income to really think about those big ideas and to come up with ideas to solve the problems we are facing as humanity in the 21st century.
Yeah, I mean on this. Oh, sorry. I dropped my book about pride then. Yeah, I mean on this point about you know, the kind of the geographical reach of UBI. I mean, one of the big questions, it seems to me, and which is why UBI isn't straightforwardly a left-wing project, and its political valence is open, is that we can easily imagine a situation in which you have a country that locks down the borders, that says, right, we give our citizens UBI, but that's it, you know, and you have to have this passport in order to claim, as well as all the other problems you mentioned, like, you know, unless you keep the welfare state, unless you have rent caps, you know, landlords are still going to, they're just going to up the rent and your UBI will be used up. And of course there will be all of the differences that pre-exist in terms of health needs and so on. So you do actually have to keep all of those sort of other state structures in place. So one thing, and this is an argument I have with left accelerationists and people who propose UBI in the UK, is, you know, why not think about a global basic income, which is a political project, right? Of course, it keeps money in the picture. You know, and one other question we might pose is, why keep money? You know, I mean, why not talk about the abolition of money? You know, this is obviously on one level a very utopian or naive question, because we immediately think of a kind of you know, a pre-circulation or, you know, barter or something like this. But I think it's worth holding open as a speculative model, so such that we rethink the value of exchange that's not mediated, right? So, you know, UBI is still tied to, of course, the money system in the first place. And then secondarily, to go back, to this global basic income, so that project says something like, well, if we globally redistributed income, it would work out something like $1 or $2 a day somehow. You know, of course, this would mean very little to somebody living in Norway or Britain or Prague even, but it would mean a lot, right, to those people who live on less than $1 a day, something like this, right? So I mean, my question maybe to you is twofold. I mean, one is why keep money? Threefold actually. One, why keep money? Two, what about the border question? You know, we can easily imagine UBI being imposed or, you know, used actually for very isolationist purposes. And three, why not a global basic income?
Yeah, but that's why, especially the IMF and the World Bank have changed their minds when it comes to implementing policies in developing countries.
Yeah.
Lots of economists at the IMF and the World Bank now propose things they call cash transfer programs for developing countries, which is nothing more than unconditional basic income for the citizens there. So in order for some developing nations to get credit from those institutions, they have to now really implement cash transfer programs. This is the proposal of the economists there. So it would be a very good first step for implementing basic income or global basic income, or even for having the first nations to try out basic income in developing countries. It would be cheaper there. We could induce it from outside at the beginning. And there's actually the largest basic income experiment going on in Kenya right now, which is privately funded by a charity, an American charity, which is called Give Directly, which distributes basic income to about 30,000 people in Kenya, and $15 or $20 a month is enough there to make a difference. So the basic income is $20 a month down there, which would also solve the issue of economic migration for the most part, because if people don't need to leave their countries to come to Europe to get a better life, and they never would leave their countries if they had a future there, if they saw a future there, an economic future. We wouldn't erect borders, we wouldn't have to erect borders, and could implement a higher basic income here, and eventually it would converge, or we could even abandon money at all. This would be the utopia, as I said before, like in Star Trek, having no money at all, just having a machine like the replicator, for instance, and saying what you want, and it materializes before you. But I think it's the bolder step to say, okay, no money at all. I think that's why I think basic income is not a utopia, no big idea. Actually, it's just the next small step in our economic system to adapt to the future.
Can I just follow up? I meant to include this in the first bit, but I mean, on this point, I mean, this kind of, you know, like you're proposing sort of reasonable, sort of almost centrist position on UBI, I mean, also brings with it this question of automation, you know, which you mentioned, and the idea that, you know, so-called full automation, although even people who defend full automation admit, as you did too, that vast quantities of work, particularly care work, can't be automated, and in fact we wouldn't actually want it to be automated because we don't want robots to look after our babies or our sick relatives, even if it were possible. I mean, there are care robots in Japan to look after lonely old people, but in fact they increase loneliness. What a surprise. So there is this big question, which is an ecological question in many ways, which is actually, what on earth is the point of increasing machines, actually? Machines are, I was going to say demonic. Well, they are, but okay, let's put it in a rational language. Okay. They increase confusion, right, at the level of their, you know, our interaction with them. They also are ecologically extremely costly. You know, the idea of, I mean, you know, automating the cashier, as you said, right? I mean, I don't agree actually that all cashiers don't enjoy their job, for example. I mean, I think there is a form of interaction that, it's safe. But, this actually takes enormous amounts of mineral resources. You end up in this situation, this fantasy of machines generating other machines. And we know that ecologically resources are finite. I mean, think about the civil wars generated by coltan, for the mobile phones and so on. Is there not a way of thinking about UBI which is also a way of thinking about a reduction of our reliance on automation and technology?
It's definitely a possibility, but I'm not having the same stance on machines that you have. I think machines are neither bad nor good.
Okay, but just at the level of resource extraction, we know that these things are finite.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when we make things, we consume things, we use them up,
Yeah, that's what we do now, because we have such an inefficient economy. We're making things, we're throwing them away after 1 year, after half a year, after 2 years. We have an iPhone every 1 or 2 years. That's really inefficient. We could build machines which are better, which last longer. We could build machines who solely rely on solar energy. We could move further with those ideas. The only thing that stands in our way is interests of big sectors of the economy who don't want this efficient economy, who want to extract rent, as I said in the movie, from the rest of us. And they don't care about if the apocalypse is coming in the future.
Hi, thank you for the film and the talk. I generally agree with, I think we're all contributing to the economy and to the pie, and we're not receiving our share of it, or it's not getting redistributed. So I think that we should all be considered contributors. But there are other things as well, like reducing our consumption in general, eating less meat, traveling less, things like that. But then there's also the idea of getting wealthy or becoming rich. That is another mental shift that needs to happen. And where does the financial resources come from? So I'm one of the advocates of data being distributed, or we're all teaching machines, basically. But what about tax loopholes or tax havens? Did anybody in your film or that you've interviewed talk about that? That consolidation, that level?
Well, that's basically the rent extraction, the rent seeking, the 40% which we lose, which is being extracted by us through tax loopholes, through lobbying and political power of big corporations.
Yeah.
Of course you would have to deal with those issues. And with consumption as well, but as I said before, we need to have basic income first in order to address these things. If we all had basic income, I think we would change our behavior instantly. Well, not instantly, but over a couple of years. Because the whole thing with why we're consuming so much with consumption is that we're working 10-hour days, we're getting maybe a huge salary, and then we compensate for things we're missing, for the love we're missing, for the time we're missing with expensive gadgets we don't really need, don't really use, and throw away after a year. So that will change this whole vicious circle that's going on right now, which is so inefficient, as I said before. So I think with basic income, and with the idea that we don't really have to accumulate wealth on an individual basis, because we share this wealth as a whole, and everybody gets his or her part of this wealth, and it's there all the time. You don't have to care about your future anymore, or your financial wealth in the future, your pension fund. You don't need a pension fund anymore, because you just get from the rest of the community of society what you need in order to live and participate in this society. And this would change a lot in the thinking of people when it comes to consumption and ecological thinking. I'm convinced of that.
I have a small technical question which might have been explained in the film, and I'm sorry if I missed it. But I have no clue in economics, but spontaneously, if I understand if we implement this system, will it, and that we keep a money system as it is today, will it not just produce an inflation, and that and then actually it will, as if it wouldn't change anything, because everything will be more expensive for everybody, and therefore because money is absolutely relative.
That's what happens when we are seeing basic income just from the demand side of the economy. What usually happens, like basic income instead of the welfare state, basic income instead of unemployment insurance or pensions. But basic income is also very important, even more important, to the supply side of the economy, to everybody here in the room, who's an artist, who's an entrepreneur, who's doing creative stuff. It would help every small entrepreneur to come up with ideas and go on the big players. So we would have, as small entrepreneurs and artists, the ability to fail and start over again. We could concentrate on the things we really care about. We could concentrate on the things we really think are worthwhile doing and inventing, and not only think about what, okay, I need to earn money in 2 years with this idea, with this invention, so I'm going to do this. But I know it's going to be destructive for, I don't know, ecologically, or has no meaning at all. So this would create an economy which would redistribute power from the big monopolies, from the big oligopolies, who can set prices, which leads to inflation, to small startups, and together with new technologies, which have yet to be invented maybe in the next 5, 10, 15 years, they can really be competitive with 3D printing or whatever. So I think that nowadays 3, 4, 5 people can compete against big global players reasonably, if they really have the ability to fail and start again, and don't have to think about the financial success of their enterprise. And when there are more people who can do this, when there are more people who can quit their jobs, their inspecting jobs, their bullshit jobs in the huge corporations, and go on and fulfill their dreams, become entrepreneurs, artists, or researchers. We only have, I don't know, 5% of the economy is researchers, which is really ridiculous. It should be 95% researching, and only 5% producing stuff. And that is what basic income could achieve, and this would lead to huge competition and to lower prices in the end. Especially when you consider that most of the products nowadays, which are expensive, are digital products. And the cost of making a copy of a digital product is 0. So there aren't any marginal costs, and inflation usually comes when we can't meet the demand, when supply can't meet the demand of a product. So I think inflation would be a thing of the past.
If we could have a last question, please. Maybe I have one last question.
Everybody satisfied now, you know.
This Czech theorist of universal basic income says that this idea actually has emerged a few times in the history. What do you think the current situation differs from all these times in the past? What do you think the current opportunity is more real than in the past?
It's definitely automation. It's the opportunity now. That's why people talk about it. That's why the broad media is talking about it. And every time there's, like 5 years ago when I started with this film, or 6 years ago, it was really hard to find articles in the media or even on video where people are talking about basic income, mentioning unconditional or universal basic income. And now, when you read the newspaper, every day in some newspaper in the world, you have an article about automation for 2 years now. And maybe not the whole article is about basic income, but it's in one paragraph, it's mentioned. Okay, maybe we should implement or consider universal or unconditional basic income. So it's definitely started with automation and with the discussion about robots taking away our jobs. That's what the big chance is now, and that's why it's not going to disappear this time.
Great, thank you for your speech.
Thank you.
If you let us 5 minutes preparation, speaker, and then we will go on.
Thank you.